everybody, and welcome back to the B Movies Podcast. You're still the place beyond the pines for all the latest movie news, reviews, and whatnot. My name is William Bibbiani. I'm the film channel editor at Crave Online, and everyone calls me Bibbs.
My name is also William Bibbiani. I'm also the film channel editor on Crave Online, and everybody calls me Whitney Seibold, which is strange.
And we are here with the second half of our very special video interview with the Place Beyond the Pines director, Derek Cianfrance. In this episode, we're going to get into some heavy spoilers about the film, so watch it first, and then we're going to answer all your questions. Check it out.
I can't think of another line of work that I'd rather be in.
You're so smart, you can do anything you want. Just don't understand why you're doing this.
I'm a cop, Chad. You got a kid, you want to provide for that kid, you got to do that using your skill set. And your skill set? Shazam.
Speaking of going to the theater, you mentioned you shot this on 35mm film and not digital.
Yeah.
I know a lot of filmmakers, well, some filmmakers have said that they are very relentlessly sticking with 35, even during the digital revolution.
Yeah.
How do you feel about 35? Is it something you wanted to do specifically, or was it just an option you felt was more appropriate?
It was an option that was more appropriate.
Okay.
When I hear someone like George Lucas say that film is dead, it feels very insulting to me. You know what I mean? To all of a sudden someone with a spokesperson to kill film, you know what I mean? When some stories need to be told on film. In 1999, two of my favorite films of all time were released. One was The Straight Story, and the other was Julian Donkey Boy.
Ooh, good choices.
And The Straight Story could have never been told electronically. Alvin Straight is not an electronic character.
Yeah.
He moves at 5 miles an hour on his tractor. Do you know what I mean? The sun is setting on his life. There's a romance in that story, in the language, in the grammar of the film. Julian Donkey Boy could never be made on film because, Corinne is eroding moments with the electronic medium. Do you know what I mean? He's capturing these, he's using, film the electronic medium as a way to, as a surveillance device or something, as a way to break down performances. And, those two films, I've watched those movies hundreds of times each, and I love both those films. On Blue Valentine, I shot the Falling in Love section of Blue Valentine all on 16mm, and I shot the Falling Out of Love on the Red camera, because I felt like, I feel like on film there's an urge. Forget aesthetics, forget about romance. I just want to talk about like working with actors, how it affects a set. With film, there's a magazine, and there's a limited amount of time. And when I'm shooting 2perf 35mm, as in Pines, there's 9 minutes and 20 seconds on a roll of film. The two words that I hate the most in filmmaking are action and cut. I don't say that. We just have a camera, and we start going. I say, let's go. And we roll out. We go 9 minutes and 20 seconds, and the film rolls out. The actors very quickly, within the first day, start to recognize that timing. And it becomes like a quarter of football. It becomes like sports. They have to get points up on the board in that time. And the way I'm a very competitive filmmaker, so I'm trying to create, my actors are like athletes for me, and they have to put points on the board, and they can feel that. Versus the electronic medium, where you can really erode time. There was an instance in Blue Valentine where Ryan and Michelle have to take the shower together in the moon room, in the future room, and the first few takes of that were the worst, because here's two people who are breaking up, right? And they're in a shower, and they're really cute with each other, and they're really awkward because the actors are naked in front of each other, in front of a crew, and it's uncomfortable and it's cute. Everything that the scene couldn't be.
Right.
But by the 6th hour of the second day of shooting that scene, by the time that Ryan Gosling said his nipples were bleeding from the soap, you know what I mean? He wanted to get out of the shower, but he had to be in there. And so all of a sudden, the electronic format could erode the performance and get to something that was no longer a performance anymore, that was behavior. So I think both of the mediums, film and electronic, can do things, to assist the actors. And for me, every aesthetic choice I ever make in a movie is for performance. It's with performance in mind.
And the other thing 35 millimeter gives you, at least from an outside perspective, is when you hear a film is made on 35, it nowadays, unfortunately, it makes it feel bigger, makes it feel special. We talked about in the last episode about how you originally conceived of this as a Western, and it has that sort of scope dynamic, and it has this this story that goes from generation to generation. It gives it this sweep.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, what we really need to talk about here in the second installment is the way that, and you've said this multiple times, the story passes the baton throughout. Like you said, it was sort of an influence from Psycho.
It moves from Brian Gosling's character to Bradley Cooper's character.
And then on
again to their children.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude,
what was your question?
Dude, bold. Bold. Well, here's the thing, and I mentioned this last time, and I want to get your take on sort of a spoiler-free territory. The film is being presented to audiences, or has been, now that you've seen it, as a Ryan Gosling sort of thriller in some regards, and that's
He's
what we
in the
get.
center on the poster, this big guy in this sexy red jacket.
And it's a character-driven version of that. It's a version where we really get to know this person. It's not like cool and slick or anything like that. It's just, this is what he does. But then it moves on. And I was in the theater going, oh, this is still going? Like, oh, well, what's Bradley Cooper doing? Like, what was your intention on that for audiences? Like, what was the feeling you wanted them to get?
Yeah, I was making a film about legacy. You know,
Yeah.
it was very personal, right? It was about my dealing with becoming a father again, and all those responsibilities that came with becoming a father again, and feeling this fire that was passed on through the generations. And you know, again, I was reading Jack London books at the time. I was thinking about Darwinism, survival of the fittest, and the calling back of the ancestors, and then I started thinking about America, and I started thinking about the legacy of brutality and ruthlessness in this country, you know, and now we live in, you know, we're very domesticated, you know what I mean? We eat with knives and forks, say please and thank you, but there's a great ruthlessness in this country's history. So I started thinking about a small town in America. I started thinking about American tribes and being born into a certain tribe, and, you know, how do you, what do you do? Like, how do you do to change your legacy? You have to make some big moves, you know, to change your legacy. So you have this guy, Luke, who, you know, grew up without a father. He's basically what you would call trash, you know what I mean? He has no, you know, he lives in a cage. He's basically an animal in a circus that goes around, and, you know, he's kind of like a matinee idol that you know, all the fathers, you know, want to keep their daughters away from. He's like the guy that the Shangri-Las used to sing about, you know, and the daughters are like, but Dad, he's really soft inside, you know, if only you got to know this guy. Yeah. But he is a self-loathing character who has no future, you know, and then all of a sudden he finds out that he has a kid, and the last thing he wants to do when he sees that kid is for his kid to grow up the way he grew up, you know, without a father. So he's going to figure out a way to be in there, but he has no tools to do that. What's he going to do for $100 a week working as a mechanic? You know, how's that going to put his kid through school? Right. How is he ever going to be a real stable choice? And the only way to do that is to maybe, you know, jump the system, you know, hack into the system, you know, become a criminal, you know what I mean? Yeah. There's some way to get ahead, just to change the cards that he's been dealt in life, and to change his son's cards. And he wants to be there for him, but in trying to avoid not being there for him, he ends up, you know, he ends up in the midst of this really violent act. You know what I mean? And the movie to me was about all of this adrenaline and all of these decisions, and kind of a tragedy of these characters' choices that lead to this violent moment. Yeah. And I was thinking a lot about guns in movies. And I, you know, as a father, you know, maybe I'm ultra sensitive with it, but, you know, I can't watch a Denver Broncos football game with my kids without having to turn off the commercials, because I don't want them to just see that violence as natural. And I don't know when violence became such the cinematic thing. Like, you know, when did it become, maybe it was Peckinpah that turned violence into ballet. But I love Peckinpah's violence because it feels like he's writhing in the flames with his characters. It feels like hell, you know, in The Wild Bunch. Yeah. Straw Dogs feels like hell. You know what I mean? Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. I see an artist that's like suffering in the midst of the human condition with Peckinpah. You know, I don't, you know, the fetishizing violence, romanticizing violence, nowadays makes me kind of sick to my stomach. If I have to see like another slow motion bullet come out of a gun and like paint someone's brains on a wall in slow motion, you know, I'm gonna puke. To me, that's not cool. It's not what I want to put out into the world. To me, I was interested in the narrative of violence, and I wasn't into how viscous I could make it, how realistic I could make brains or guts on the screen. I wanted to have the audience experience true violence in a narrative sense, as if violence ever entered your life. There's no going back from it. There's no sanctity of a flashback in real life, you know what I mean? So I wanted to tell a film that was all about this adrenaline and choices that leading up to this violent moment, and then the consequence of that violence, and the echo of that violence. And again, America with its ruthlessness and brutality on its hands, you know, it's Macbeth, you can't wash that off your hands, it's still there. And I wanted to make a movie that doesn't go away, and throughout generations it's still playing out, you know? It's the sins of the father.
Well, you mentioned Macbeth, but what I kept thinking while I was watching it was actually an element of Greek tragedy where both Ryan Gosling and Bradley Cooper, and then later on, particularly their kids, they end up sort of becoming their fathers, whether they like it or not. Often even though they try to fight against it for a very, very long time. And we talk about this legacy, but it's so cyclical. Do you feel that there is a way to break out of that, or do you feel that there's a certain amount of predestination?
It's that whole nature-nurture debate, right?
Yeah.
I know with my sons, when they were born, the moment they came out of, came out into the world through the birth canal, they were themselves. They were immediately who they are. Their nature was there. And as a father, what I'm trying to do is nurture them, and I fail often, you know what I mean? It's the hardest job in the world, the best job in the world. But that's the job of fatherhood to me, is nurturing and trying to lead them. But they are going to be themselves. And I believe in Darwinism. I believe, these characters in this movie, you mentioned Greek tragedy, every character in this movie is trying to avoid something, especially the adults. Avery, Bradley Cooper's character, is, he's grown, he's raised as royalty in this small town, and he's expected to assume this mantle of power that his father has for him. But he wants to be his own man. So he's going to be a cop and try to prove himself on his own, his own worth, as oftentimes, children do who are born to very powerful parents. They want to just define themselves. And so he makes this one move with too much ambition and too much eagerness to prove himself, and he makes a mistake. And in this mistake, then, he's going to suffer some consequences, but he doesn't want to. So he gets out of it. And so by trying to avoid punishment, he can never avoid it. There's a corruption that breeds in his soul because of it. There's a toxic shame that breeds in his soul because of it, and that manifests in his son. And so even though his life, he gets away from it, his son has it, because he can't look at himself, he can't look at his son, and his son comes back to to finally deal with the sins of his father, and same with Dane's character, who his mother, Ava Mendes, doesn't want him to ever turn out like his father. So what does he do? What does she do? She tries to keep the truth from him. But by keeping the truth from him, creating it a mystery, it makes it more of a legend in his mind, and makes him more curious about it, and makes him run down that path.
And it makes him more like his father in the very end.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, see,
But I will say that my movie is about evolution. Again, Darwinism. That's I had a lot to think about with this movie. How do you deal with it, right? How do you deal with legacy of brutality? Through vengeance? How's the movie going to end? Vengeance? That would be very satisfying. Revenge. It's very cinematic. But I also don't want to put that into the world. It could end with hopelessness. It could end with suicide. But I also don't. I'm not a hopeless person. I'm not a cynic. I think the only way to do it is through forgiveness. So that's what this movie is ultimately about. I think that's how it moves forward. And to me, this movie is a hopeful movie because of that. And there's the characters in this movie, the next generation, are cut from the same cloth as their father, but their survival, I think that's how you survive, is through forgiveness.
You want to get beyond the Pines, if you will.
Thank
you very much.
He's been waiting the whole interview to do that.
I have.
I'm sure.
I almost opened with it.
So you say this film, it's about sort of evolution, about legacy, about fatherhood. Is there any of your own, if I could be a little personal, any of your own anxiety as a father sort of leaking into the material? Were the sons in this film sort of avatars for your own children, or they were avatars for you?
No. I write from a place of personal vulnerability. I wouldn't be a writer if I wasn't a filmmaker. I don't really know how to write. So the only reason I do write, and the only reason I've learned to write, is to write about things that scare me. I write about my fears. Blue Valentine was all built around my fears as a child that my parents would get a divorce. And nuclear, I was like scared of nuclear war and them getting a divorce. So when I was 20, they broke up, and here I am trying to I'm a young man. I'm trying to fall in love myself, and I don't want to necessarily repeat all the things I saw my parents do. And so again, Blue Valentine was a film about trying to avoid legacy.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this movie is the same. It covers a lot of the same territory. It's just about trying to. Honestly, it's about survival. I believe my children will be better than me, and I want to ensure that they're going to be better than me. And that's what this film is all about. It's about the fear of that not happening. Do you know what I mean? And the fear of my mistakes being so huge in my life that I could stop them from realizing a potential that I don't even know.
Now you say you want to write about your fears, and now I'm wondering, are you working on something about nuclear war?
I tried.
Really?
I was writing a film called The Man with Purple Eyes.
Ooh.
Back in
I like the title already.
1999. I know, I love the title. I got 10 pages in, and then I went back and I wrote this one alone, and then I went to fix the first 10 pages. And after a year, I perfected this first 10 pages. I think I was too scared to get beyond that. And maybe that'll be my penultimate film someday. Yeah. The film that someday, if I'll be really brave, I'll look into it and make it.
You could just make those 10 pages. Like as a short. You ever think of that? I mean, because I want to see it. I want to see these perfect 10 pages.
I know. No, it's a mess.
Oh.
It's a mess because perfection. There is no such thing. I'm a perfectionist, but you never get it. Yeah, to me, you never are finished. You just have to do it, and then you have to just stop.
Yeah.
What
was it a thriller, or was it like a guy in a bunker? Can you tell me anything about that, or you want to keep that on the DL?
Well, it was. I know it was Isaac de Bancolet who was. I was imagining it for. He would be the man with purple eyes, and I know that he wore a lot of yellow in the movie.
Yeah.
That's about as far. And he didn't actually have purple eyes.
Okay, that was a metaphor.
Yes.
So it's not like the boy with the green hair.
No, it wasn't like it was. He wasn't like wearing those contact lenses. You know what I mean? Those.
But he's wearing yellow.
Well, just a yellow shirt.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought we should
great.
shoot it in Jamaica.
Yeah, right. Any excuse, right?
Yeah. Did you Rockers? You seen that movie Rockers?
No, I haven't.
It's one of my all-time favorite movies. Yeah. Theo Bafaloukas, I think, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He was Demi's production designer. One of the great movies, Rockers.
Excellent.
We'll check that out.
That would be hard to, both Blue Valentine and The Place Beyond the Pines are kind of smoky and urban, so it would be difficult to see you working in dappled sunlight.
Well,
I'm sure you're capable of it.
Yeah. So far I've made movies in these places in America that are, that have kind of seen, I guess, the golden era of those places, has passed them and maybe will return again. You know what I mean? It's why I also like to shoot film, because I think about Rochester, New York quite a bit, and Kodak, and these places are like, they're places like that, Detroit, places that, industry leaves behind, and then there's people still there, and there's people in houses, and the houses are made out of wood, and how do you keep up a house made out of wood if you're not making any money? Do you know what I mean? And so I'm interested in kind of telling these American stories of American struggle. I tell kind of a modern portrait of America, the America that I know,
Well, and The Place Beyond the Pines is also, it's not modern. It takes place over a great amount of time, but this is not tech heavy, it's not tech savvy, it's not...
No. You could put this film in almost any era.
Yeah.
Really, if you wanted to.
Yeah,
so that you called it a Western didn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, there's something, there's like a romanticism, like you don't like cell phones. You don't want to necessarily shoot a cell phone. You'd rather shoot someone in a phone booth. That feels more cinematic. But actually, there is a way. You know what I mean? Because so much of communication is through texting. You know, it's actually a great tool for dialogue and a great new way to communicate. You know, so I'm not adverse to telling like very modern stories about technology. It's just this movie, these people didn't feel. They again, just like Alvin Strait, they didn't feel like electronic people. They felt like human. You know.
Yeah. And I don't see a sci-fi film from you in the near future.
Well, Man with Purple Eyes.
Except for Man with Purple Eyes,
I'm
of course.
also writing a film with my wife, kind of a science fiction movie about childbirth. Yes.
Okay. Is that does that aspect of that terrify you? You always say you always write about stuff that's afraid.
Yeah, you know, I mean, maybe, you know, though, I think I got to make a musical.
I think you do. I think you do.
For
You know
sure
what I
you
mean?
do.
I want to go to a happy place.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I want to stay in that. There's happy places in my movies. You know, a lot of them, but I want to maybe like.
Place Beyond the Pines, in fact.
It's a very happy place.
Yeah.
It's a very happy movie.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that one, and that's the one you'll get your Oscar nomination for, because you're gonna get one. You know, it's coming.
Yeah. I think I'm looking forward to the musical version of The Place Beyond the Pines. I'll just call it Place.
Place exclamation point.
Right. Awesome. We are out of here. So
out of time, yeah.
we'd like to thank you again,
Thank you,
Director
guys.
Derek Cianfrance, Director
Thank
of The
you.
Place Beyond the
Pleasure.
Pines,
Thanks,
Director of
man.
Blue Valentine.
Appreciate it.
Check out his movies. You know you wanna. You wanna take us out on something? Anything you want people to know about the film that we haven't covered?
You want to hype anything,
message?
or just
I'm
recommend
not a
any good
message
donut shops?
filmmaker.
Or
Right.
I really don't have a message.
Made a film about generations, man, and legacy.
Yeah, well, it's just the instigation.
Right.
You know? And I say this, my favorite movies are the ones that are like my friends, you know? That I feel like I can go to throughout my life and they change.
Yeah.
I know they're not changing. I know I'm the one that's changing, but at least they're made open enough.
that they can be with you the whole time.
Yes, and that my imagination can be turned on to them. I remember when I saw, for instance, Killing of a Chinese Bookie, which is one of my favorite films. I hated it. I was like, who is this guy, John Cassavetes? What a terrible filmmaker. What a terrible film. He's my hero now. That's my favorite film. You know what I mean? You know, I like a movie like that actually can transform throughout time.
And that's The Place Beyond the Pines. Yay! Check it out now. It's in theaters.
I want to do two in one day. Yo, get up! I'm not gonna let you bring us both down.
There's a way out of this. You're not gonna like it.
You know something, Luke? If you ride like lightning, you're gonna crash like thunder.